morning, everyone. Welcome to the session. First of all, I'd like to thank Red Cloud for putting on this excellent event. It's become one of the mainstays in the calendar, so it's great to be here representing Critical Elements. My name is Eric Zaunscherb. I'm the chair of Critical Elements Lithium, and I used to be a mining analyst, so don't hold that against me. You know the disclaimers. I will be making some forward-looking statements. It's our vision to be a large lithium producer, and I know that's a bit of a motherhood statement, but I base that on the fact that we're one of the only companies in North America that has all the pieces in place in terms of IBA with the Cree, permitting, full permitting with both the provincial and the federal levels, a robust feasibility study, and we're currently at the stage where we're looking for the exact perfect strategic partner to advance the project. So that's a rather unique position to be in the lithium space. And I say large because our one project, the Rose project, is the one that I was speaking of that is so advanced, but we have 1,050 square kilometers in the James Bay region of Quebec. We're not just going to have one rose in that bouquet. We are looking for the next rose and the next rose and the next rose. In terms of the market structure, you can see we have 218 million shares outstanding. We currently have over $30 million in the bank. We're not in any rush to do any equity financing. As I said, we're working on the strategic partner. In terms of the highlights, I have mentioned high purity because we have low impurities. We have low Fe2O3 and low mica, which are very beneficial to have those. We can sell very high purity products, spodumene concentrate, directly to the glass and ceramics industry, which commands about a 100% premium in the lithium space. And our product is extremely well suited for chemical upgrade in batteries. Government and First Nation support, the fact that we have our permit in Quebec is an extremely important step, and we have First Nation support in that we have formalized our arrangement with the Cree back in 2019 in a formal investment and impact and benefits agreement. Management team, also a very important competitive advantage. For example, we have Jean-Sébastien Lavallee, the CEO. He is a multi-generational Quebecer in the mining industry and exploration industry, and as a result, he grew up with the Cree. He has gone hunting and fishing with the Cree, and that is a big, important advantage when one is working in Cree country, having that relationship. Also, we have the former CEO and CFO of Rockwood Lithium, which was sold for $6.2 billion to create Albemarle's lithium industry, or the lithium division. And so we have that lithium industry experience that is so important. And I have to say, when we're sitting right now with strategic investors on the other side of the table, it is essential when you're playing 3D chess with these people to have some chess masters on your side of the table. Strategic partners. We have intentionally avoided doing any memoranda of understanding with off-takers, because we don't believe that they have a great deal of value other than promotional. And that means that 100% of our product in an extremely tight market is available. And so that's also part of the 3D chess game that's going on. And then finally, re-rating opportunity. At one point, we were trading as low as 0.25 times the NPV of our project. And as you'll see, that's 2.4 billion Canadian, and that has moved up towards 0.5. The average is around 0.65, and we should be trading at a premium to average given our advanced stage. So there is a re-rating opportunity that's coming as we develop these strategic relationships. I mentioned the experienced leadership team. I'm not going to go further into that other than to point out again the lithium experience of Stefan and Marcus, how important that is. But I will point out the fact that we spent over a year patiently finding the VP that would lead the engineering and construction going forward. And it took a year to find the right people. Under Yves Perron, he is now building the owner's team. Yves and his team built the Renard Diamond Mine in advance, ahead of time, and under budget, working with the Cree in partnership. And so that's extremely important. That sets us apart in Quebec, having that owner's team with the experience. I mentioned that we have a very large portfolio of now 1,050 square kilometers. That top block you can see with the pink star in it. The pink star is the Rose project. extremely well situated, right beside a highway, and you can see the power line bottom right. As of this week, we have permission from the Quebec government to have Hydro-Quebec move that power line because it's directly over top of our open pit. One couldn't have better infrastructure. Now, access to that grid is extremely important. On a regular basis, 94% of the power produced in Quebec is hydropower, and the rest is from renewable sources. So that's extremely important when we see the end users scrambling to find product from ESG-rich sources. That bottom, that long, elongated package of properties, that's what's called the Nemaska Belt, that has the Nemaska's Wabushi deposit in it. We have the Lamar deposit that by the end of this year we hope to have our initial resource. And then we also had gold spot discoveries using their artificial intelligence to highlight areas using all the geological, geophysical, geochemical data, putting it all together, highlight where there's potential for more spodumene. And we have definitely some new targets that will be drilled this year to see if we can add to the bouquet. I mentioned that we have good relations with the Cree. It's in fact excellent relationships. In fact, recently there was an article that was relatively negative about lithium in Quebec, but within that, Chief Chizo of the East Main Nation cited the fact that the number of kids graduating from high school has accelerated over the last couple of years, largely because they see a hope, they see future in having jobs in their neighborhood, working as engineers and geologists and metallurgists, and not just cleaning dishes in a camp. So there is already a direct measurable impact that we can see. Moving on, we have an extremely pure deposit, and portions of that deposit are so pure that we will be able to sell 1/4 of our production to the glass and ceramics industry. And as I mentioned, you get about a 100% premium for that product over your traditional chemical grade product. So having 1/4 there unencumbered, we are in direct communication with consumers and users of spodumene concentrate for glass and ceramics. They are getting a lot of their product from Greenbushes in Australia, and Greenbushes is working towards the end of its life. So they are very keen to find replacements for that. I mentioned purity. This is sort of a benchmarking slide, and you can see from an iron oxide perspective that we're very well placed, currently at 0.8% Fe2O3 in the Rose deposit, and as I said, a portion of the project is even lower. The mica content is one of the lowest at 2.7%, and what that means is you have a direct translation to a very high yield to spodumene concentrate. So using, in this case, because it's relatively fine-grained, we are able to use flotation instead of dense media separation, and we are able to achieve a yield of 87% to spodumene concentrate, one of the highest in the industry. And then that also results in a very low iron oxide content. Back in the earlier days with PAC, Frontiers PAC is extremely low, and we're gunning for them. We put out our second feasibility study, an updated feasibility study in July of last year, using an updated price deck for lithium and using updated Capex estimates, and using a very conservative price deck, and I'll show that to you in a second. We were able to still end up generating 82% IRR after tax and an NPV of 1.9 billion US, or roughly 2.4 billion Canadian. So we are now trading at roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of that. Capex, 357 US, that's our initial Capex, and that payback is 1.4 years. The project life, 17 years. Occasionally we get pushback on that, and people say, well, it's only 17 years compared to some of the projects that are at 20, 30 years. The reality is that the guys stopped drilling because people were going, okay, let's see what the economics look like. That's not to say that's the end of the deposit. The Rose deposit itself is wide open to the north and to the northeast, and within 10 kilometers by road, there are several satellite deposits. So we are quite confident that we'll be able to extend the life of the Rose project itself. I mentioned the price deck that we're using, and you can see it's a staggered price deck, higher for the first few years and then lower, but we're using an average for the glass and ceramics industry of 4,000 US, an average of 1850 for chemical grade. The spot is currently closer to 6,000. So even if you cut that in half, you're still well above. And even at this low level, we're still looking at a $900 million EBITDA in year 3. So we're trading at a fraction of EBITDA as we're going forward here. I mentioned the distribution. We're around 50,000 tons going to the glass and ceramics industry, about 175,000 tons going to the chemical grade for chemical conversion. A bit of tantalum, we don't talk about that an awful lot, but it does affect about 10%, recovers about 10% of your cost. In terms of the capital, you can see the capital here, 357 million US is the initial estimate. We have seen some movement in prices. Some of the prices have gone down since June, July of last year. Some have gone up. So we're quite confident in that initial CapEx number. In terms of the operating cost, if you focus on the far right block in US dollars per ton of concentrate, we're well under $600, even before the tantalite credit. And that's a nice place to be when your product currently spot is trading at 10 times that. Catalysts, we've delivered. It's taken a long time. The project was discovered in 2010. We started the permitting process 5 years ago. It took 5 years to get the permitting through COMEX, which is the joint committee between the Cree and the provincial government in Quebec. That's a long time. And it took about 4 years to get it through the federal process. That had specific timelines legislated. But the Quebec process has no specific timelines. So as much as the Quebec government is dying to get into their battery hub model, this scenario of having a battery hub in Quebec, this is a process that's independent of the government, and it takes its time. Anyone who tells you, and I've seen this in print, that they're going to be in production starting next year in Quebec is incorrect, and I'll leave it at that. Next, we'll see the final investment and construction decision once we have our ducks in order with regard to funding. Now, this is a conservative timeline. This is going on the assumption that we have financing completed by September of 2023. That will allow us to start clearing trees in September, ground clearing through that. Then we have, under the feasibility study, about a 20-month construction program. You start partway through the detailed engineering. Front-end engineering is pretty well done. The detailed engineering process is well in process, and we're looking at first production towards the end of 2025. A 6-month ramp-up has us achieving commercial production levels early to mid-2026. Of course, you have a lot of people saying that, my project is going to be perfect and we're going to have it up and running in the first few weeks. That's simply not realistic. As a geologist originally, as a mining analyst for decades, it doesn't work that way. We are aiming for a 6-month ramp up. We hope that that's realistic. Some of these projects take longer, some are achieved earlier. We'll see. Now, what does the Capex funding look like? We've had several parties that we've been talking to for a very long time, measured in years, that have been to the site and so on. We've got dozens of parties that are in the data room having studied what we're doing. And we started a formal process. We asked them for expressions of interest formally back in January. We've had a number of very large parties that have said, would you give us a few more weeks? We're just sharpening our pencils. It's way more important to get this right, to find the optimal strategic partner or partners for this project than just having things done quickly. So it took us a year to find the right party to be running our owners team. It's not going to take us a year to find the right partner to work with from a financial perspective, but we do hope to have that all well in place by September, potentially quite a bit earlier. What does it look like? Well, it depends on who your partner is, because you've got partners who are OEMs, for example, potential partners. They don't want to run any mines. They'll invest, as we've seen with GM and Lithium Americas, with Stellantis buying into this week into Los Azules in Argentina. And so that happens. That's great. But they don't necessarily want the offtake themselves. They want to direct that offtake into their supply chain. You have battery manufacturers that want to get the lithium into their cathode active materials. You have mining companies that want to be or already are exposed to lithium and want to increase that exposure. Oil and gas companies, one of the first companies to fund Lithium Americas and their Cachori-Alaros project was Bangchak Petroleum. And Bangchak, as a petroleum company, put in quite a bit of money into Lithium Americas and made a lot of money on it. Traders. The traders are relied upon by the OEMs to deliver the iron and the zinc and everything else to them. They're also looking for the traders to deliver lithium to them. So we're going to see that. All of that's going to happen over the next few weeks, which will then lead toward a final investment decision and then turning the sod, so to speak. Exploration, I've mentioned that we have a lot of ground. I'm just going to quickly summarize that. The first part is to expand Rose. The second part is to deliver an initial resource estimate for Lamar. Third is to test some of these targets that we're seeing. And just so you see quickly what that looks like, you can see in this particular map, the heat map, if you will, the bright colors that you see, that is from artificial intelligence going by probability as to where you'll find a pegmatite bearing lithium. And so as you can see, we have this one at Lamar that is over 5 kilometers long. We have some drilling into it already from 2016 and 2017, and that's the 2016 and 17 drilling, the white dots, and that's what we'll have achieved by the end of this year. So we are very excited that we are going to be adding another flower to the bouquet, but we'll see. I mentioned that the Rose deposit on the bottom of the slide is still open to the northeast. That's what we'll be doing, is drilling to extend that, as well as testing some of the satellites that are just up the road. So I'll leave it at that.